This week, to be closer to China, 2019 marks the 60th anniversary of what is called the People's Democratic Reforms in China's Tibet Autonomous Region. And it is a key year for the elimination of absolute poverty. How is poverty alleviation carried out in Tibet?
Quite a number of poor people live in remote areas prone to natural disasters, in high altitudes and relatively close. It is difficult to shake off poverty in those areas, so we must relocate them to alleviate local poverty.
After poor people are relocated, what kinds of measures support their new lives?
First, the people now have access to spacious, comfortable, and secure new houses. Second, the surrounding environment is impressive. We also provide them with job opportunities depending on their capabilities and skills after receiving training.
In Tibet, aside from a few mountain passes, most of the highway network has taken shape, and we're also accelerating its development. It is completely different from what it used to be.
This week, be closer to China. Tibet connotes particular things in the foreign media. When I'm outside of China and I see a report about Tibet, I can quite often predict its theme and tone. I can quite confidently predict that the report is not about poverty alleviation. Perhaps some should. To appreciate the full story of China's Tibet Autonomous Region, one should understand how China's targeted poverty alleviation campaign is working there. President Xi Jinping has made targeted poverty alleviation a cornerstone of his domestic agenda, because for China to truly become a moderately prosperous society by 2020, not a single Chinese citizen should be living below the line of extreme poverty. Beginning in the late 1970s, China's economic growth lifted more than 700 million people out of poverty. But for more than 100 million, as of 2012, when Xi Jinping became China's senior leader, economic growth was not enough. These poorest of the poor lived in remote, often mountainous regions, and due to history and legacy, they lacked the basic elements of infrastructure, education, healthcare, and the like. Some of these people were in Tibet. Thus, to alleviate poverty, the Chinese government adopted a series of targeted methods, including household relocation, industry and micro-business development, education and healthcare assistance, and pairing support with more developed regions. We focus on the most radical method, complete relocations of poor households and even of whole communities and villages, which China has pioneered. Why is relocation important in Tibet? How does the process work? Is it compulsory? Will relocation alter Tibetans' original way of life? How do people adjust? Investigating relocation in Tibet brings us closer to China. Tibet, the roof of the world. Nan Chu, about 330 kilometers from Lhasa, is in the northeast of the autonomous region. With an average altitude of over 4,500 meters above sea level, Nan Chu features high biodiversity of wildlife, including bears.
It is scarcely populated here. This is why the brown bears have caused such havoc. I couldn't sleep well at night, fearing the brown bears to break in. In the summer, they often come and destroy all these. The remaining few houses also get damaged.
Sidrop has been living in this village for more than 3 decades. Recently, she and her son were relocated to the town by the local government.
I'm moving these left stuffs to the new house. In the past, I walked 3 hours to send my kids to school. When we went back, we were also on foot and it was dark. Now it's very convenient. The school is just around the corner.
good on the product.
We have a relocation program for 135 households, or 603 people in the township. People who cannot make a living by relying on local resources or have difficulties in accessing transportation, electricity, drinking water, schools, and hospitals are relocated. The poor households are resettled around village committees, township centers, or in the city of Nan Chu.
Lo Mai is one example of how relocation is carried out in Tibet. The local government plans to relocate 266,000 impoverished Tibetan people from rural and pastoral areas in order to lift them out of poverty. By October 2019, about 248,000 had been relocated to areas with more abundant resources and better infrastructure. Most Tibetans are nomadic. It's not unusual to see them herding yak or sheep, but it is a poor region, one that needed economic infusion.
Sudrop's family does not raise much livestock. She can reach an animal feed balance. Thus, she gets a subsidy of over 1,000 yen annually from the state for maintenance of grasslands.
I don't have other sources of income but the subsidies on environmental protection and pastures offered by the state. I make ends meet by digging Chinese caterpillar fungus on their mountain. It's over 7,000 yuan.
To people like Sudrop, relocation is more than moving to a new place. It also means a new way of life. How does relocation work? Is it compulsory? How to choose a proper location? How much government subsidies do they receive? And after relocation, what kinds of supporting measures are taken? To address these questions, we meet Norbu Dondrup, Tibet's Executive Vice Governor, who is in charge of Tibet's poverty alleviation. As it is for all areas in China, Tibetan Autonomous Region has vowed to lift people out of poverty and eradicate absolute poverty by 2020. One of the poverty alleviation mechanisms used nationally with particular relevance in Tibet is relocation. Why does the Chinese government adopt relocation to reduce poverty in Tibet?
Quite the number of poor people live in remote areas prone to natural disasters, in high altitudes and relatively closed. It is difficult to shake off poverty in those areas, so we must relocate them to alleviate local poverty.
Tibet witnessed agricultural involution. Located in high altitudes with barren lands and a cold climate, people in Tibet have to raise more cows and sheep as its population grows, which leads to overgrazing and more cows and sheep, a vicious circle. Thus, more local people get poorer. It takes an external force to break the involution process. How to develop and upgrade the society are crucial issues for Western China.
Are Tibetan people forced to relocate? Do they have the right to say no?
The relocation is a systemic project which involves people's free will, the respect for people's will, our guidance on people's thoughts, as well as steady advancement. Why do I say that? Some people are willing to move since they have realized that living in their original residence would see little hope of shaking off poverty, let alone achieving prosperity, with their lives and security even being threatened. In those areas, even with huge amounts of input, it is unlikely to lift people out of poverty. So people there have a strong desire to move voluntarily. Thus, it is also easier for the government. Some people, however, have little awareness of their living and production environment and threats posed by frequent natural disasters. So, we have seen cases when people hesitate to leave their native land or where they have lived long. Our cadres have done a lot of work on this aspect. Not only have a large number of working groups been stationed in the villages, nearly 5,467 cadres work in the grassroots, and over 13,000 officials at section head level and beyond have built assistance pairs. and they also work on guiding thought. As long as the people recognize the benefits of relocation, they are highly motivated.
In the beginning, local people refused to relocate. Still, given the high altitudes and cold climate, it is impossible to support all those people. If people get relocated, the natural environment could get restored. We also help people find jobs after relocation. In the beginning, people did not understand the need to move. After moving away from the poor and cold regions, they find life had significantly improved in all aspects.
"2019 marks the 60th anniversary of what is called the People's Democratic Reforms in China's Tibet Autonomous Region, and it is a key year for the elimination of absolute poverty. How is poverty alleviation carried out in Tibet?
First, the people now have access to spacious, comfortable, and secure new houses. Second, the surrounding environment is impressive. We also provide them with job opportunities depending on their capabilities and skills after receiving training.
In Tibet, aside from a few mountain passes, most of the highway network has taken shape, and we're also accelerating its development. It is completely different from what it used to be.
Do you feel the pain on this side?
Yes, it's painful here, both here and there.
Stretch and flex your leg like this.
It's all right when I stretch it.
What about this hand? Raise it like this.
I cannot raise it further from here.
Nan Chu has had rheumatoid arthritis for about 8 years. In 2017, Nan Chu and her husband relocated to Yangbajian, a town about 90 kilometers northwest of Lhasa, the autonomous region's capital. The next year, Nan Chu had an operation which helped her recover.
After the relocation, she could walk. She can walk slowly with someone supporting her after the surgery. She was crippled before and could barely stand. The medical and other conditions are better here compared with our hometown.
Last year, we explored to play the role of Tibetan medicine and admitted her to our research program. Starting from December the 24th, 2018, we offered her and other patients the medicine at the rehabilitation center. The observation lasted for 3 months. After that, her rheumatoid factors were completely transferred. The results were pretty good. She can sustain her health condition by taking the Tibetan medicine without having any hormone.
Due to high altitude and severe climate conditions, the Tibetan Plateau is an area where rheumatoid arthritis commonly occurs.
After screening, altogether over 170 people suffering from rheumatism and rheumatoid arthritis. We created health profiles for all these patients. Gradually, we have roughly 200 patients receiving treatment.
Yangbajian is famous for its hot springs field, which facilitates rheumatism treatment.
The hot spring hydrotherapy is offered for free to the relocated people. In the beginning of May 2018, under the leadership of the Health and Family Planning Department of the Tibetan Autonomous Region, the Tibetan Medicine Hospital set up a research center on prevention and treatment of rheumatism in Yangbajian, which was mainly established to serve the relocated population.
Lo Tzu and his family also relocated to Yangbajian in 2017.
First, the altitude is too high. Second, transportation is inconvenient. Third, my spouse is terribly ill. That's why we chose to relocate. She suffers from rheumatism and was recommended to relocate to Yangbajian after taking physical examinations. The hot spring here would play a certain role in easing her chronic pain, so we chose to relocate. In the hometown, her illness was heavier. Here, at a lower altitude, her high blood pressure and rheumatism are seeing recovery.
Besides better health, it is also more convenient to live here.
It's better for the kids to access education. In our hometown, it takes a long way to school. Without modern transportation tools, we could only send our kids to school by riding horses. It's much more convenient here. In our hometown, it takes 10 to 13 hours to send our kids to school at Shuanghu County. Now, however, we spend just half an hour.
To some extent, the best way to evaluate the success of a relocation plan is to see whether people have a better life after moving to the new place. To some, it is the case.
I started to serve as group leader from December 2017, when our village was fully established. Now, I work as a security guard at the Yangbajin Spring Resort. An annual salary for the group leader is 2,200 yuan. A monthly salary for security guards is 3,000, with an additional 500 yuan bonus for good performance. Compared with the past, my income is higher because I have more diversified sources of income besides animal husbandry.
But to others, the situation is more complex.
After I fell ill, I cannot manage my eating, drinking, toileting, and all other stuff. My husband takes care of my life.
My child is with my relatives in the hometown to look after livestock and herd the sheep. The pasture subsidy for 3 of us is 13,000 yuan in total annually. My child and I are forest rangers and have an annual income of 7,000 yuan. She's living with disabilities, which is subsidized 3,600 yuan per annum. The state subsistence allowances raised to 1,400 yuan per quarter. For me, I cannot go to work to earn money, since I have to take care of my wife at home.
And it also takes time for people to accommodate to the new environment.
When I first arrived, I was a stranger in a strange land. The living conditions were just so-so. I felt bad more or less. Later, as we got more familiarized with our neighbors, mastered some living skills, and with markedly improved living conditions, I enjoy my life here now.
It is warm and comfortable here in winter. I want to go back to the hometown in summer. I never went back after the relocation.
Her physical conditions do not allow her to go back.
To Lodan's family, local industrial development, personal capacity building, and health improvement are of equal importance with relocation and eco-compensation. Like other remote or ecologically fragile regions in China, poverty alleviation in Tibet requires comprehensive measures. How do you select proper locations for Tibetans to relocate? Prior to relocation, what factors need to be considered?
First, we must do a great deal of preparatory work. The basic principle is to move people from poor living conditions to townships with better public services, infrastructure, and richer resources. With all these measures and integrated approaches, a large number of people have moved out of the poor areas prone to natural disasters and to better locations. We have invested a total of over 17 billion RMB. We chose the relocation sites that would help people truly leave poverty behind and achieve prosperity.
You said that the government has invested more than 17 billion RMB on household relocation. How are the funds spent?
Over 17 billion RMB was invested in relocation, which is a tremendous input in Tibet. That is roughly 60,000 RMB per person. How did it reach 60,000 RMB? For each person, a living space of 25 square meters is ensured. In light of commodity prices in Tibet, the daily necessities based on the state per capita assistance, subsidized loans and government support, the Tibet Autonomous Region provided 60,000 RMB for each person. A living space of 25 square meters per person reflects a respect for local people's traditional lifestyle as well as a necessity for today's living.
Targeted poverty alleviation means to subsidize the people in real need, rather than enriching corrupt officials in the name of poverty alleviation. How did we push for the targeted poverty alleviation in Tibet? All are registered with a bank card. With a popularized internet, information could be verified online at any time. Thus, we ensured transparent governance. Without the facilitation of the internet, we probably could not achieve this. Today, in the internet era, all are involved and better management technologies are also used to help. In the past, without such good management technologies, we could not be so targeted. Today, with transparent information on the internet and with people having cards and documents, embezzlement is unlikely. It is, in fact, to maximize the efficiency of poverty alleviation.
After relocation, what kinds of supporting measures are utilized, such as building infrastructure?
First, the people now have access to spacious, comfortable, and secure new houses. You may have a look yourself and get a first-hand experience. Second, the surrounding environment is impressive. Government invested heavily to improve people's access to water, electricity, roads, and communications. We also provide them with job opportunities depending on their capabilities and skills after receiving training. Thus, they can enjoy their lives in the new environment. Third, effective health care, medical care, and education. It is convenient for people to see a doctor and for poor students to receive an education. Cultural service facilities and stations have been set up to allow people to better enjoy public services in a new environment than in the former living conditions.
After the relocation, agriculture in Tibet developed pretty well with produce sold to the EU. Thanks to strong sunlight, varied temperatures on uncultivated land, the agricultural produce in Tibet is green and of high quality. The investment in modern agriculture is much higher than what you could imagine.
Does relocation increase Tibetan people's cost of living?
To reduce people's investment, we did not place an extra burden on the people. The people are entitled to the preferential policies, new houses, infrastructure, public services, and accommodating production factors, including education, medical care, health care, and employment opportunities. What's more, ecological compensation and reward for reforestation and green fields have been issued. A large number of ecological positions have been made available. For people serving in those positions, their average income is over 1,350 RMB. The eco-compensation is roughly 3,000, 4,000 to tens of thousands per household. They will not face extra living costs nor extra pressure as a result of the relocation.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
2019 marks the 60th anniversary of what is referred to as the People's Democratic Reforms in China's Tibet Autonomous Region. It is also a key year for the elimination of absolute poverty. According to a joint report of China's National Bureau of Statistics and China's Tibet Autonomous Region Statistic Bureau, Tibet's GDP was about 148 billion yuan, about $22 billion in 2018, with a growth of 9.1%, which ranked as the fastest growing provincial level region in China. China promises to completely eradicate absolute poverty by 2020, and targeted measures have been taken to lift people out of poverty. Why targeted, and how does targeted poverty alleviation work in Tibet?
I just visited Tibet as I did in 2010. The change is pretty impressive. After people truly enjoy prosperity, an internal circulation of the economy would be critical. During my previous visit, it took 300 yuan to buy a pair of Tibetan boots. They now cost from 5,000 to 8,000 yuan. Many believe it is inflation, but actually the local people are happy with it. Why? Because Tibetan boots are handmade by local people. When people buy their boots for 5,000 to 8,000 yuan, their income rises accordingly. For the local people, they used to earn 300 yuan for half a year's labor, but now 5,000 yuan for 3 months' labor. So the local people would in fact witness a consumption upgrade. It is about the internal circulation of the economy. During the circulation, we cannot simply look at price increases, but also the higher happiness index.
I believe Tibet not only embraces a historic opportunity of winning the battle against poverty, but also an all-round development, including socio-economic growth that would improve people's well-being. We are aware that Tibet represents the most impoverished region among the 3 regions and 3 prefectures, and a provincial-level concentrated contiguous impoverished area, which received great care from the party Central Committee and the General Secretary by granting us multiple preferential policies and support to comprehensively win the battle against poverty.
President Xi Jinping makes a remarkable statement about poverty alleviation. He says, "I have spent more energy on poverty alleviation than on anything else." In 2013, Xi proposed the concept of targeted or precision poverty alleviation, meaning individualized procedures, including standardized definitions of poverty, identification criteria of poor people, and customized plans and programs to bring each poor household out of poverty. Tibet epitomizes the impact, where about 500,000 impoverished people have been lifted out of poverty. Of those, over half, more than 250,000, via relocation to areas with more resources and better infrastructure. According to China's National Health Commission, the incidence of poverty in Tibet has been reduced from 35.5% 5 years ago to 8% today. Healthcare services have increased the average Tibetan life expectancy from barely 35 years in the 1950s to over 68 years today. Prior to 1959, in Old Tibet, not a single modern school existed. The enrollment rate for school-aged children was less than 2%, and the overall illiteracy rate was as high as 95%. Now, Tibet provides free tuition, meals, and accommodation for children from farmers and herdsmen's families and from poor urban families to support compulsory education, which in 2012 was extended to 15 years, including 3 years of preschool. Tibet was the first region in the country to enact this policy. Poverty alleviation in Tibet, as successful as it is, does not mean that other problems do not exist. But who would dare argue against the priority of poverty alleviation for the Tibetan people and what it means for improving their present lives and expanding their future prospects? That's closer to China.